Hey everyone, welcome back to part 3 of our lecture. We're going to take what we know about information processing and apply it to academic learning. The first area we're going to look at is reading. So what actually goes into reading? Well, the first thing we need to be able to do is be able to understand that letters have names. An A is called an A, a B is called a B. And from there, we take those and we understand that not only do they have names, but they also have sounds that go along with them. So an A is an A, but it also says ah, and it can also say A, right? That's a reading rule. Once we have sound letter correspondence, then we're going to start being able to put letter combinations together. Things like CH says ch, SH says sh, and then we're going to blend those sounds together. Also, what needs to happen in order to be able to successfully read is to have sight words. There's a lot of words out there that cannot be sounded out phonetically. Things like the, was, what, all of those words are not phonetic. We need to be able to read them without having to sound them out. After we have sight words, we're going to be able to use our working memory to make sense of text. So we have to be able to hold things in our brain while we read. As we're reading, it's not just about reading the words, about retaining that information so we can make sense of it. Once we're able to make sense of it, we can start combining parts of text to make fuller comprehension of a story, right? So we might be able to comprehend one sentence says, like the cat is wearing the hat. We might read that and then be able to show someone the cat that is wearing the hat. But ultimately, what we need to move towards is being able to read whole passages and understand what is being said and what is happening. And that's kind of what goes into reading. There's a lot that goes into reading. Now, there's two approaches to reading and how to teach reading. There's phonics, and then there's a whole language approach. Phonics is really breaking down the rules around how the structure of language works and reading works. You're going to start with your sound letter correspondence, understanding that certain letters make certain sounds. And then this leads to being able to decode words. So, for example, if you were looking at the word cat, you would know that C makes a k, A makes a, and T makes a t. And then you would be able to blend those things together. Another piece around decoding is being able to substitute sounds in and out, understand how sounds work. So if I said to a child working in the phonics mode, the word cat, now take the k and make it a t. They'd be able to substitute the C for a T and say, oh, tat. So they're understanding the manipulation of sounds. They're also looking at, when you teach phonics, teaching spelling irregularities. So understanding that there are exceptions to the rule and how those rules work, such as I before E except after C. There's a lot of rules in the English language and English reading. So it's about learning those rules to be able to apply them effectively to decode text and understand, kind of almost like a treasure map when you're reading. Reading the clues, understanding that there's a context and there are rules to reading. The other way to learn how to read would be the whole language approach. And this is the idea that we're teaching children the entire word within the common text. The reason we would go about a whole language approach would be two reasons. The first being that it provides context, it makes it meaningful to read, it's more enjoyable to read. There's a function applied to reading, as well as there's words that, again, when we think about sight words, don't make sense. You cannot apply phonics rules to them. When we think about what's successful is actually the combination of the two approaches together. We need both. We need to be able to understand how to decode text, and we also need to be able to have value with why we're reading and be able to read words that are not decodable by typical rules. When we look at the sequence of reading, from 2 to 5, we really start to pretend to read. We also can read familiar words, and that's more in context, especially initially, with things that are visually stand out and have some kind of representation with them. What I mean by that is a stop sign. You would be able to read the stop sign because you associate it with the sign itself. You might also be able to read common signs in the environment, such as if you were a child that went to McDonald's a lot, you'd be able to read McDonald's. You might be able to read Starbucks or Rayleigh's or Safeway, all of those things if it was common in your environment. You're also going to be able to read your name very early on. Things of that nature. And then that's going to move to more familiar words that are not associated with a symbol. From there, you're going to be able to, 5 to 6, start doing some sound letter correspondence. And this is decoding CVC words, so consonant, vowel, consonant, things like hat, cat, pat. So being able to understand each of those letters corresponds with a sound, and then being able to sound it out and blend it. You're also able at this point in time to start retelling simple stories. So if you heard, for example, the 3 Little Pigs or the Cat in the Hat, things that are very simple in nature, you could retell somebody that story. At 6 to 7, you're getting consonant blends. So things like SL, ST, for example, the word state, you need to blend the S and the T together. Or how about chalk? That would be a harder word. The CH makes a ch, and then ALK, A-L-K, is a different sound because you blend those letters together. You're also going to get some irregular spellings here, and you're able to read grade level texts. At about 7 to 8, you're decoding multisyllabic words, meaning that if multiple syllables, so things like chocolate, or let me see what else, maybe fantastic, right? There's fantastic. You hear 3 syllables in that. You're still working on grade level with stories, and your comprehension is also building, understanding more complex text. From the ages of 9 to 15, you're able to acquire information without questioning. So you're reading for learning at this point in time. You're not learning to read, you're reading to learn. You also can be able to read lots of different types of text, poems, narratives, newspapers, magazines, all of those different features. And by the time you're 15 to 18 years old, you're not only reading lots of different kinds of texts, but you're able to take into other people's viewpoints and considerations and hopefully differentiate what might be factual versus not factual. So having some more discrimination in your ability to understand the text. All right, let's moving forward. And as you can see on the bottom before I change slides, it really goes from this progression of I'm learning to read to I'm reading to learn, like I mentioned before. So who can read it? Let's play a quick game. If I showed you the word stop, what age group would be able to read that? Yeah, that 2 to 5-year-old range, right? The preschool age. What about calculator? This is multisyllabic words, right? It's a little bit older. Okay. What about sheep? Okay, we're looking at those blends, right? So we're looking more 6 to 7. We have the SH that makes that blended noise. All right. And what about this poem? Yeah, looking at more like 9 to 15, correct? All right. What about the word cat? That's a perfect example of a CVC word, consonant, vowel, consonant. That's going to be your 5 to 6-year-old. All right, let's move on to mathematics. Again, just with like reading, there's 2 ways to teach mathematics. You can teach it in a rote application. So there's certain rules that you apply and you kind of memorize those things. For example, when you were learning your multiplication table, you might have learned it just by doing flashcards. 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, right? You're memorizing the fact. Another one would be borrowing and subtraction. We're not really thinking about how the quantity changes. We just know there's a rule that we can use to get the number right. Compared to mathematical relationships and patterns. And this is more what we're seeing in Common Core nowadays with children in school, the idea of being able to conceptualize and understanding relationships and strategies. So instead of learning our multiplication as 8 times 3 equals 24, we're going to understand that if we had 8 of something, 8 more of something, and 8 more of something, that would be 24. And we might have a mental image of what that would look like. Sorry about that. Another example would be you might see pictures of bicycles. We're learning times tables for 2. So every bike has 2 wheels. I have 4 bikes. So therefore I have 8 wheels. The idea that we can conceptualize and see what it looks like visually. Another example of this would be place value. And so instead of borrowing or carrying an addition, we're looking at, how many 10s do we have? How many 1s do we have? And actually conceptualizing again, visually, what does that look like? What's the relationship? So there's benefits to both. Obviously, if you have a rote application, you're able to pull that information up very quickly. But when you have a relationship, you really have a deeper understanding of how math works and you're able to apply it more effectively. All right, when we look at how we advance through math as we develop, we begin at 3 to 5 with understanding whole numbers 0 to 10. From there, we're going to expand that and we're going to have more whole numbers, probably up to 100 or in this range from 5 to 7. And we're able to kind of manipulate those numbers as well, right? We're able to add and subtract within those numbers. And then from there, from 8 years to adulthood, we start getting this real wide range of whole numbers and fractions from 0 all the way to 1,000, maybe even beyond that. And then from there, we also get this about 11 years it comes in and we continue to work on it into adulthood, negative numbers and additional fractions. So negative fractions, decimal places, all of those things come into place as we get older. All right, we're going to talk about intelligence real quickly. There are 2 types. We can define intelligence, not 2 types, sorry. There are multiple ways to define intelligence. We have our general intelligence, how we think of it from an IQ test. Those things typically are measuring our verbal abilities, our nonverbal abilities, understanding spatial concepts, things of that nature, working memory, how much we're able to hold on to our minds, whether or not we can repeat numbers back, how fast we process information, so how fast we work through problems. And then we have other ways of looking at it. Sternberger's triadic theory was the idea of being able to analyze intelligence, creative intelligence, and then practical intelligence. And then last type is Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence, this idea that we all kind of come in with a different skill set and a different ability, different intelligences. We have linguistics, so somebody who's really good at speaking and talking and good with their words. A mathematical intelligence, somebody who's really good with manipulating numbers and understanding that. Musical intelligence, being somebody who is musical and can play instruments or sing and understand notes. Somebody like Beethoven, for example. We also have spatial reasoning, thinking about people who maybe are engineers or construction workers or even architects, understanding spatial how things go together. We have body kinesthetic, which is the people who are really good at athletics. We're thinking about, people who are Olympians and go to the Olympics. Naturalists are people who understand nature and are very connected to that, understand different types of trees, understand how to grow things, are connected, being outside. Maybe geologists might be another example of that as well. Interpersonal skills would be somebody who understands relationships with other people, other people's moods. Interpersonal would be understanding of self, really understanding how you feel. Now, every single skill we do in our lives can fall into one of these categories. I want to go over some of them really quickly with you just so you have an idea of different examples. The first one being Oprah Winfrey. So Oprah Winfrey is best known as a host and producer of her own show, The Oprah Winfrey Show. She's been watched by 22 million viewers in the United States and aired in 313 countries worldwide. She has won awards in broadcasting and her influential contributions to reading books. And she has trusted through judgment and suggestions. So when we think about Oprah and we think about Gardner's multiple intelligence theory, what are some intelligences that come out for you? So she has linguistic capability, right? She's able to be very articulate with her words. She also has very high interpersonal skills, understanding how people think and work together. All right, let's move on to another one. If we think about Charles Darwin is famous for developing a theory of evolution to explain biological change in humans and animals. His ability to identify and classify the components that make up our environment aided him in one of the most important theories in history. We think back at all of those intelligences, interpersonal, intrapersonal, body kinesthetic, naturalist, linguistic, spatial. What jumps out at you? Definitely a naturalist, right? He has this connection to nature and how it develops. All right, Thomas Edison. We know he invented the light bulb. He's able to think logically and solve problems. He develops a new idea. He's more of that mathematical, logical mind, right? That would be his intelligence area. Leonardo da Vinci would be somebody who has multiple areas of interest, right, or abilities. He has a sketchbook. He's drawn lots of things. He's able to solve problems. When you're really good at art and you can draw, that lends itself to spatial ability. So when we think about somebody like Leonardo da Vinci, he would be very strong in the spatial awareness or the spatial intelligence component. All right, one more, John Lennon. We think about John Lennon, obviously famous singer, songwriter, part of the Beatles. I'm not going to read it to you. If you want to read it, go ahead and pause it. Essentially, he has very high musical intelligence, correct? All right, LeBron James, kinesthetic. So basically, at the end of the day, there are a lot of differences in IQ, and there's reasons for them. One is hereditability. We know that we inherit some component of our intelligence. Cultural influences also play a role in how we measure intelligence. Sometimes we are not picking up on different cultures' intelligence because of what our individual culture values. We might not be measuring what a child has been exposed to. Environmental influences are also impactful. Thinking about low socioeconomic status, they're definitely going to impact your ability to perform certain tests. Language and communication style is another one that kind of plays into culture because we know that different ethnicities tend to communicate differently. By about third grade, they start code switching. They understand that how communication occurs in different contexts is different. Code switching just means that if I'm with my own family, I might talk differently than if I am at school. Right? I understand that people communicate differently. Previous knowledge also impacts it, or what we value for knowledge is going to impact what we measure for IQ. And then there's also a thing called stereotype threat. This idea that if I belong to a certain race, ethnicity, or group that I feel like is undervalued or seen as not doing as well, I'm going to feel threatened by that and maybe not perform as high on my IQ test. There are some things that we do in order to make sure that we're measuring IQ. One thing you should be doing is having more than one test done, right? So having multiple factors come in, and also not only relying on cognitive tests, but pairing that with adaptive skills. And that gives us a real clear sense of whether or not somebody actually has an issue with cognitive deficit or not. All right. And with that, I'm going to take a break here. We will come back and we will talk about language. See you then.